Namaskar. Welcome to today's session. I am Dr. Vidhi Madan Chadda, and the title for today's session is Indian Securities Depository System, Legal and Regulatory Framework. In today's session, we will discuss the key aspects of depository system in the country, and particularly we will focus on the legal and regulatory framework which is supporting it. Before we begin, let us take a second look and give an overview of the topics that we'll be covering in today's session. We will start with the emergence and need of depository system in the country, the framework, why it was required to be institutionalized. What were the circumstances which led to the institutionalizing of the depository system in the country? Thereon, we will move to discussing the basic concepts and processes for depository system. Then we'll move on to deliberate upon the role of key participants in this depository system. This discussion on the role will lead us to understand the rights and obligations that each of these players have in this system. Then we will appraise the legal and regulatory framework which supports the depository processes in the country. And finally, we will take a look at the role of SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, as a regulator in ensuring investors' protection in the depository system. Let's start with the understanding of the need, the emergence of the depository system in the country. The institutionalization of depository system can be said to begin with the enactment of the Depositories Act of 1996. This law, along with allied rules, led to causing a sea change, or we can say a paradigm shift in the manner in which the securities are traded in the securities market. As traditionally, prior to this, the securities were dealt and traded in the physical format, paper format. Right? We used to deal, buy, sell shares and other securities in the paper format, share certificate format. However, moving to depository system allowed us to trade in securities in the electronic format. The need was felt owing to the huge volumes of funds and investors being attached to the securities market. Because after a point, it becomes difficult to deal with the load of paper and tracking the paper movement in the form of share certificates, keeping records, addressing grievances. It became incumbent to move to depository format, that is e-format, e-system of dealing with securities. So introduction of depository system actually removed the physical, structural as well as systematic risk that are inherent while we deal with the physical share certificates. Because, any such dealings would lead to challenges of theft, forgery, mutilation, destruction of share certificates. And today, even, in the times of post-pandemic, we understand that e-documentations and, keeping the records in the e-format have become, a reality Even today, important documents like degree certificates, other key documents can be kept in DigiLockers and e-formats. So it began in 1996 that this transition from physical share certificates, we moved to the system of electronic credit system of securities. This required institutionalizing a structure which would facilitate this process. For institutionalizing this structure, we required the establishment of certain bodies which could facilitate this very process. One of the key players in this process is the depository. So depository can be compared to an organization like a central bank, wherein the securities are held in the electronic format. And this happens at the request of the shareholder. However, the shareholders do not directly reach out to the depositories. They can reach out to their agents called as depository participants. Right? So, in order to utilize the services which depository offers of safekeeping of securities, maintaining the ownership and other allied data set of the investors, and also being the link between the issuer companies and the investors. So they are linked to the ultimate investors through their agents, that is depository participants. So the law requires for Depositories Act 1996 provides that there can be multiple depositories which can be established in the country. Just after the enactment, we had one depository being set up called as NSDL. Later in the session, I'll also delve into the constitution and the functions of these depositories. And later on, another depository, CDSL, was also added as a depository for providing services of dematerialization, that is the conversion of physical shares into into electronic form, and providing these facilities of safekeeping and other allied services. And the law, that is Depositories Act of 1996, provides that depositories, in order to function as a depository, must be a company which is incorporated and registered under the company law in the country. And also, before acting as a depository, they must be registered with the Securities Exchange Board of India. Then we move on to understand the depository, the role, the establishment of depository participant. Depository participants are those whom we directly reach out to. So anybody who's desirous of investing in the stock market, trading in shares, first reaches out to a depository participant. And depository participant are the agents or of the depository and the representatives of the investors in the depository system, and they cause this link between investor and depository. Now that we understand that a company which gets a certificate of registration from SEBI can be a depository, we'll also discuss the two depositories, which have been set up in the country, that is NSDL and CDSL, they provide for various services, like the services of opening of account, of dematerialization. Dematerialization is actually a process whereby we convert the physical share certificates into electronic format. So it is exactly like when we go to a bank, we deposit cash, and in terms of depositing that cash, that entry is reflected, credit entry is reflected in our bank account. And whenever we take out those monies from ATM or any other ATM and from bank branches, that amount is debited from our balance. Similarly, when we purchase and sell the shares, this credit and debit entries get reflected in these accounts. A corollary to dematerialization is rematerialization. That is when we convert our electronic shares, the shares which we use, keep in electronic format, to physical share certificates. Then settlement, other services like disbursement of non-cash benefits, like right issue, bonus issue to the accounts, dissemination of such benefits is also easier through this depository system. Actually, these depositories, when they form this link, they facilitate and they reach out to the ultimate investors through the mechanism of depository. They somehow institutionalize and streamline this process of converting physical share certificates into electronic format and further trading in these shares in the stock market in these electronic format. On similar lines, we have to understand that depository participants, when we say that depository participants are agents, are those which agencies like law provides that any financial institution, any banking company, even stockbrokers above a particular threshold limit can function as a depository participant after applying with SEBI, registering with SEBI, and getting attached and complying with the bylaws depositories. So hence they act as an agent of the depository. They act as branches or banks which directly deal with the depositors. Then these facilities of account opening, dematerialization, rematerialization, or settling accounts, and even अगर as an investor आपको अपने कोई account अपनी details share change करने हैं, address या name या nominee, all this can also be facilitated through this mechanism of depository participant easily. And then this customer interface also allows ease of pledging or such hypothecation and other such requirements if the investor wants at any point in time. Then we have to understand that there are this framework that is facilitated through the legal and regulatory setup in the country has issuer company, the companies which issue shares. Then there are depositories, NSDL, CDSL. We have two depository. The basic difference between the two is, besides of course I said this NSDL, National Securities Depository Limited, was established in 1996 and later was followed by Central Depositories Service Limited, which was established in later in 1999. NSDL is attached to NSE, those shares, scrips, bonds, etc., which are traded at National Stock Exchange, and CDSL is facilitates the trading at BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange. So this is the basic difference between national NSDL and CDSL. Otherwise, in terms of their functioning, in terms of their way of working, they are same. Then there are depository participants. As I said, these are agents which who can be financial institutions, banking institutions having the securities division, then even stockbrokers, even custodians, शेयर ट्रांसफ़र एजेंट्स, ये सारे भी डिपॉजिटरी पार्टिसिपेंट की तरह काम करते हैं. आप देख रहे होंगे ये कुछ नाम है जो बहुत कॉमनली डिपॉजिटरी पार्टिसिपेंट्स के बारे में जब बात करते हैं तो ये नाम सामने आते हैं, जिनके पास हम जाके डीमैट अकाउंट, ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट हम ओपन कर सकते हैं. देन देयर इज अल्टीमेट इन्वेस्टर who tends to benefit with this streamlining of the process. Now, as I said that this process of converting physical share certificates in the electronic format, which gives this benefit to the to all the stakeholders, not only the investor but also to the issuer companies and other participants in the securities markets like share transfer agents, custodians, clearing houses, and the overall ecosystem of the capital market also benefits with this streamlining process, because we don't have to deal with the challenges of handling volumes of papers and all the disbursements of entitlements of the investors also reaches in a time-bound manner. Hence, this process of dematerialization reaps and gives several benefits to all the stakeholders. Before moving to benefits in detail, let us try to understand the process of dematerialization. The investor desirous of converting their physical share certificates into electronic formats can reach out to any depository. There is no restriction on the choice of depository. Depending upon investor's choice, depending upon the best services that are offered by a particular depository, cost effectiveness, quality of services, a particular depository participant can be chosen by an investor, and an account can be requested to be opened by the investor with the depository participant. Now, for opening an account, suppose you have your share certificate with you and you are thinking of converting it into the electronic format, then you follow this process. However, if you take, you have procured a share which are normally being done through the demat account only, electronic format only, can be later on converted if you want to keep them in the physical format, share certificate format. So in order to convert, let us first understand the basic steps that you have to follow, which are laid down under the law and the framework. That is, you fill out a form that is called as a dematerialization request form, where you submit your physical share certificate, you cancel it and you submit it for conversion. This is then intimated to the depository and ultimately to the issuer, and these changes in the records are then being facilitated. Your physical share certificates are cancelled, and the number of shares are then credited in your डीमैट अकाउंट. आपको अकाउंट खुलवाने का वही सेम एक बैंक अकाउंट का प्रोसीजर होता है. KYC नॉर्म्स, योर ID proof, आधार, पैन कार्ड आर दी डॉक्यूमेंट्स विच यू नीड टू सबमिट. देन जैसे मैंने कहा, ये बेनिफिट्स पूरे इकोसिस्टम को आते हैं. इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए ऑफ कोर्स बेनिफिट ये है कि पेपर वर्क एंड एड्रेस चेंज, नेम चेंज, थेफ्ट, जो भी एक फिजिकल डॉक्यूमेंट को रखने के लिए जो भी चैलेंजेस होते हैं, दे ऑल द रिस्क are minimized and even done away with. Then of course faster disbursements of payment upon buying, selling. It is easier to transfer and even later for any nomination and transmission to legal heirs is also facilitated easily through this process in a cost effective and less time consuming manner. And even the non-cash benefits like the bonus, the right issue are easily dispersed through this mechanism. However, it doesn't, I'll just suggest that the Depository Act does not, restrict the right of the investor to only opt for dematerialization, holding in e-format. Though there is a requirement by SEBI to deal with shares in the dematerialized format, however, the law gives an option to retain the shares in the physical format. However, with the benefits that arise and accrue to investors, it is beneficial to move to electronic format. Then, of course, issuer company के लिए भी बेटर रहता है क्योंकि सारा कुछ ई फॉर्मेट में होता है. वो इजीली रिड्रेस कर पाते हैं ग्रीवेंसेस को, डिलेज मिनिमाइज किए जा सकते हैं, एंड इवन अपडेटिंग द रिकॉर्ड्स, मेंटेनिंग द रिकॉर्ड्स एंड अपडेटिंग देम फ्रीक्वेंटली बिकम्स ईजियर. The capital market, of course, tends to benefit with transparency in dealings, with good governance, better practices, and attracting foreign and institutional investors. As I said, there is a legal framework which provides for depositories law, which is the central legislation. Then SEBI provides for the regulation of the participants, depository, all of them in this sector. And depositories frame their bylaws for deciding the scope of functioning of its business partners in the market, and the business rules are also drafted for their operational activities. Besides that, an interface of other legislations can also be taken into consideration. As we understand that the aim of an objective of this law is to provide the institutional framework so that this transition from physical to electronic form can be facilitated, and then this dematerialization and holding of shares, stocks can be done. Law permits all the kinds of securities, shares, bonds, debentures, government securities to be dematerialized under the Act. Then the securities become fungible. When I say fungible, it means interchangeable. The moment you surrender the security, your physical share certificates, they tend to lose their value, and जब आप later on अगर आप उसको कराना चाहेंगे वापस rematerialize, then you will not get the same share certificate. It is similar like जब हम cash deposit करते हैं और हम withdraw करते हैं, you don't get the same currency notes. Similarly, upon your moving to dematerialized format, the shares become fungible. As I said, that issuer company, depository participant, and investor, they are all bound by agreements with each other. This framework gives out rights and obligations to each of these parties. Of course, depositories are bound to act as the registered owner upon dematerialization and maintain the registers and other details of the beneficial owners, that is the investors. The depository participants always have to maintain the account of buying, selling of the investors in the dematerialized format. Issuer companies जो है उन they are duty bound to provide details as and when required to the depository, and beneficial owners, as I said, they can opt out anytime. They get all the benefits easily under the depository format of any they continue to enjoy all the rights they have as a shareholder in the company, and it facilitates ease of any pledge, hypothecation, etc. in the process. अब SEBI इस पूरे प्रोसेस को इन सारी पावर से बहुत इजीली रेगुलेट कर पाता है, वेयर इट हैज़ द पावर टू कॉल अपॉन एनी इंफॉर्मेशन और इंक्वायरी फॉर एनी इंस्पेक्शन. इट हैज़ पावर टू इवन गिव directions in case it observes that there is any non-compliance of the provisions of the law, and it can even go ahead with levying penalties and adjudicate as the case may be. So SEBI के पास depository participants, issuer company, if any details are required and they are not submitted, then to call upon such details and directions can be issued. Then the penalties are normally levied for failure in complying with any of the directions of SEBI or furnishing any information which is required by the issuer company, depository or depository participant, or any of these. If any of these participants, they fail to enter into agreement, or they fail to redress investors' grievances, there is any delay in the process, or the records don't reconcile, there is a requirement of levying penalty. और इस process को और streamline करने के लिए there is even Scores, a platform which is provided by SEBI for centralized redressal of grievances of the investors. So scores.gov.in एक प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे इजीली कोई भी redressal है grievance का investor का in this process of dematerialization, depository से depository participant या किसी भी और intermediary से can be done. So that's brief account of the framework that provides for depository system in the country. Thank you so much.